Hi, I'm SamTrattles, and I'm really excited to be joining Prosper on the Online Prosperity Show. In the next little while, we'll be chatting about negotiation strategies and how you can negotiate with less fear and actually get better outcomes. So I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of industry trailblazers. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a guest whose expertise will transform the way you approach negotiations. Now, Sam, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Prosper. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, I thought what we are going to be doing today is arm wrestling, but apparently you've got a better way of actually getting things out of people, right? So we're here for that today.
Excellent. Well, we might get to the arm wrestling later.
Oh, great stuff. You should see how I was practicing before we came to this, because I don't know what it's like for you on the other side of the table, but I'm ready for this.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Great stuff. So I'm hoping after we finish this conversation, you're going to be able to negotiate better outcomes with less stress and more satisfaction. And that's the exact thing that Sam does. And so many of us end up in sticky situations, whether it's a supplier that has, reneged on their contract, or a client that, is expecting a lot more than what was agreed upon. So that's when negotiations come into play. I'm just obviously going to be asking questions as a dad, because I keep negotiating with my kids. First of all, to get them to go to bed. And second of all, just at least to brush their teeth. And I'm hoping I can learn a thing or two from Sam today. And so as you can see, there's a wide spectrum of things where negotiation tactics will actually be used. So Sam is the CEO and founder of The Other Side of the Table, and it's a company that's dedicated to empower leaders to ask for what they want without fear. And she's had over 550 million in deals that have been negotiated. So that's a lot of negotiations that would have happened. Or if you're Elon Musk, that's just buying a yacht or something like that. But in any case, there's a lot of negotiation that needs to happen. So she's redefined what it means to be a good negotiator, and what it means for you to walk out from a negotiation satisfied with less stress and struggle. Now, Sam, I don't know about you, but I just got a speeding fine. Are you able to help me with that one?
A speeding fine. Oh, that's a tough one. Well, you used to be able to have a conversation about that, but I've noticed recently that the website's changed for New South Wales, at least, and you have to have had no previous issues for the last 10 years. So if you haven't had anything for 10 years, then I can help you with that. But yeah, they've become very strict on that. So parking fines, on the other hand, I can help you a bit more with that one.
That's fine. Sam, I was rushing so that we could record this, so I'm not quite sure if you'll be able to get me out of that sticky situation, but I know you've been able to get many a leader out of many situations on the other side of the table. Now, you've had a fascinating career. You started off in corporate marketing, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's been an interesting journey. I mean, I started way back in the day in small business and family business. So that taught me a lot of things. And then traveled the world and, ended up in corporate life, which was fascinating. So I've been privileged in my career to work across the UK, South America, and in Australia. So, yeah. And then 10 years ago, decided to chuck it all in and start my own business and build a consultancy.
Fantastic. Now I know where you got your skills from. Have you ever seen how difficult it is for, bringing fruit into Australia? And if you've had to come from overseas with maybe a banana, you're actually worse off than somebody carrying a gun. So I'm supposing that's when you actually honed your skills from all this travel then.
Yeah, it's funny when I look back on my time, where did I start this process of wanting to become a negotiator? And I probably would have been the last person, grow up in a time when older people knew better and young people were told to be quiet and, know your place. And but meanwhile, you're in this time where people were saying, well, you can be anything you want to be, but don't try and be too much. And it was really a contradictory place and time that I grew up. And so I didn't know whether I was supposed to push hard or not push hard, or try and get the best outcome, but don't be too aggressive and, don't be seen as these things. So I was constantly being told different things as a young person. And then there was double standards, what my brothers could do versus what the girls in the family could do, which found me to be somewhat irate. So, one of the beautiful gifts I got, many gifts from my parents, but it was also about being curious and always asking why something had to be a certain way. So I think that's where I sort of hit the tension of, oh, okay, whilst I don't think things are fair, I do think I need to understand the why. And then that would help me sort of accept or completely disagree with the way things were being decided on, and not let them happen to me, actually participate in how do I affect change.
Absolutely. I quite like that because it paints a picture of where it all started. So you are showcasing young Sam, who is faced with a world that only, what did they say before? Children are meant to be seen and not be heard. And I can only imagine that would have been what was happening. What was the scenario around? You did say there was small business involved.
Yeah, so once I left, studying and whatnot, ended up in family business, and that was challenging. It was one of those times. It was a business that did extremely well, and then went through some really hard times. And I remember it was so stressful having to pick up the phone when people were asking for money, and how do we manage those conversations. So I think, you don't realize how different smaller business is when you're running paycheck to paycheck, or pay run to pay run, should I say. And so cash flow is such a big part of smaller business. And when you're dealing with the big companies, and we were dealing with Boral and Pilkington Glass and various other big brands, assuming that they were going to be difficult, when actually they were very helpful and very amenable. We just needed to pick up the phone and have those conversations with them, that things are not great at the moment, but we will get to the place where we can solve these issues.
Absolutely. Now, within the family, who was running a business and what sort of business was it?
It was my uncle and his wife, and it was glass and aluminium fabrication, so sort of construction work related stuff.
Absolutely. And obviously that type of work would have put you in the middle of suppliers and also clients wanting to, come across. And I do understand, as a small business owner myself, pay cycles and things of that nature just show up before you are ready for it. What sort of roles were you exposed to in this small business?
Yeah, a lot. So I ran the office, and I was too young. I didn't know what I was doing, really. I was out of my depth for a lot of it, but it's a lot of, on reflection, I see what I now see as such an important part. And now that I run my own business, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really pleased that I had the experience of the tough times. I mean, nobody's been in business in the last 5 years that hasn't been through a tough time, right? And if you've made it, give yourself a pat on the back and go, have a beverage, because it's been really hard. But those things, those times when we are challenged, are the times that we learn the most.
Absolutely. It's where the lessons come through. I visually believe in life we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And if you want to live the best life, you literally have to learn the lessons, maybe through your own experience or other people's experiences. And once you now know, how to deal in situations like that, or how to be on the other side of the table, then you can contribute to others. So there's amicable experiences through and through. But you being young at that particular sort of time and things were just all over the place, what was the sort of perception you had about people or older people?
Well, I think power was a big part to it. And I assumed that the big companies would have all the power, and we were just a small company. I mean, they had really large turnover. And so me understanding that even though they have theoretically all the power, they were still willing to have conversations to solve the challenges together. And I think that that was a privilege for me to learn that it's not David and Goliath. It's, hey, here's two people who need to solve a problem, and that happens to be money in this instance, or payment terms, or quality of product, etc. So just de-escalating the power struggle is something that I think people need to do as stage one thing, to think about, okay, is there really a power imbalance, or am I assuming that that's what's causing a problem? And sometimes it absolutely is. And it depends on who you're dealing with and how they behave. But a lot of the time we sort of add a layer of, I'm assuming that there's a power struggle here and I'm the one who's not in the power seat. So, we need to make sure we are coming at it with the right mindset.
Absolutely. I quite like that, because so many people automatically assume defeat before they've even, accepted anything that's, going in there. But this was, if you say that was construction, this would have been maybe, and if you would allow me to say this, but a male sort of dominated environment. How did that also put a spin to the way that you approach some of the negotiation that you were doing?
Yeah, through my career, I've done a lot of things that have involved a lot of men, and worked in sport, worked in sponsorship, and worked in with telco, etc., and banking and insurance. So I don't know. For me, it's everybody. People are people. So I think it's how you come about it. So your mindset is absolutely paramount to how you approach things, and I think that if you're having conversations that are tense, it doesn't matter who that person is or what their background is. It's about what's our tactics for de-escalating things and actually having constructive conversations. So I often get asked, do you think men are better than negotiators than women? And I really don't think so. I think that anybody who understands there's a process to negotiating and can prepare effectively, then it doesn't matter what their background is. It's about building up their bank of experiences and knowing, hey, I've done that before in this situation. Maybe I can do it again, even though it scares me, but I know I've done it. So I can, draw on that bank of knowledge. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where I've seen egos in rooms, and many big egos, and maybe I had one at certain times as well. But what's driving the ego is really what's important to how do you change the conversation.
Absolutely. See, I noticed somewhere in my collection of research, that a lot of banging of the table, a lot of power poses, and a lot of, putting your feet on the table and, just telling everyone that you're here to negotiate automatically, disarms the next, the people on the other side of the table. Now, did you ever come across any of that, or is that something that, I may be making up as we go?
No, absolutely. No. I mean, we're seeing it play out in the world stage at the moment. So there's tactics and strategies that are brought into play at certain times. But if that's how you want to start the conversation, then that shows how you want to run the process. So if it starts out aggressively, how do you set some rules of engagement so you actually get to a resolution? So you can throw a grenade into a conversation, fine, but is that going to be every single conversation? I don't think so. I think that there's going to be some calmer conversations. It's a team sport, negotiating often. So how do we have conversations about certain aspects with certain different people who can be a bit more constructive about all the nitty-gritty pieces? So I don't think I've absolutely seen people put their feet on desks. People smack their hands on desks and all these types of things, because often we are negotiating things that matter. So an emotion is, you can't be a robot. So the emotions can get high, and it's how do you want to be how do you want to be perceived? So I often talk about, if you're negotiating and your child was sitting next to you, would they be proud of the way that you're behaving? And that's one of the voices that has to be in your head about how you're behaving. Now, if you do get upset and do lose it, so to speak, then it's how you recover. How do I say, oh, I'm so sorry, Prosper, that just got out of hand. What I was trying to say was this, and I just I didn't feel like I was being heard. Could we continue the conversation?
But if you say sorry to somebody, then they will walk all over you. And if it's in maybe a high stakes environment, they'll actually wipe the floor in that room with your head. And for people like me with no hair in my head, I get very intimidated when things get a little bit heated up because, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point that you raised, right? So, is it a weakness to say you're sorry? Now, if I did the wrong thing, I'm wrong. So I didn't mean to be a jerk, but I was. So I'm a human, and it's my duty to say I'm sorry. So to me, apologizing is a strength. And when no, we don't want to set things up so people walk all over us, but we also need to be realistic that probably the chances are, if I'm negotiating with you today, I'm going to negotiate with you again and again down the track. So Australia is a very small town and we negotiate with the same people over and over. So our behavior will be returned to us later on, good, bad, or indifferent.
And usually when I'm in a heated situation, I tend to speak very fast, just so that we get to the end of the conversation. And if they haven't heard me, then that's their fault. And, we got to do this thing speedy quick,
Yeah, that's right. We get this pace about what we're doing. And that really comes back to, how have I prepared for this conversation? Have I just gone, made a cup of tea and walked into the room? Or have I actually laid out what is the intention from this conversation? So are we here to negotiate the entire deal, which happens very rarely in one conversation? Or are we here to negotiate a certain aspect of it?
Yeah, because there's nothing as interesting as striding into a room clear on what you want, what you're going to say, and how you're going to get it. But no matter how you're prepared, have you ever heard the statement that, everybody's confident until they get punched in the mouth? And
I have not heard that one, but I'm pretty sure it's true. I'm not going to try that tactic, but sure.
all right, so so you left the family business and you went on a walkabouts. What was the first country you went to?
Oh, I went to Hong Kong, into China. Then I spent 6 months in Africa traveling around and loved it. Loved it. And then after that, I was broke and ended up in London.
Absolutely. Now let's start with China. Obviously, with China, they have a lot of customs. They have a lot of culture and things of that nature. What were some of the highlights that you discovered that no matter how good you are negotiating in the West, you might not even, get them to even acknowledge, especially when you're speaking to like people in China?
Yeah, and I think it goes for anywhere around the world. If you're negotiating with people in Australia that are from a different culture or different background, you need to understand their ways so that, it shows respect. And if it catches you off guard, then you need to be able to understand, I need to reset and look into this a bit more. So it's super, super important. A part of the process is to research the people that we're negotiating with, and what is their ways. Also, how does that mesh with our ways as well? So, we are coming together to reach agreement, but if there are, keeping face and saving face and things like that are super important. Even the way back in the day, I don't know whether it is now, but the way that you handed over your business card, and some cultures, if you start a negotiation, it's not about backing away. Once you start it, you're in it. So it's really about understanding, okay, what does this mean to the person that I'm having this conversation with?
Absolutely. I like that. Yeah, because I think with some cultures, you hand your business card with two hands, and the bow signifies where you place them in the hierarchy and things of that nature. So pretty cool. And yeah, those are some of the things that so many people might overlook. And then you went to the cradle, to the motherland, Africa. Yeah. Where did you go?
I started in South Africa. I'd wanted to go to Africa since I was 10 years old. There was a TV show back in the day called The World Around Us, and it was often about Africa. And so, yeah, finally made it there in my 20s, and I was just, yeah, absolutely loved it. So I went to South Africa, all along the garden route, up the East Coast, and then, yeah, ended up all the way to Egypt, actually. So, yeah, it was a big
Wow.
adventure. It was incredible. So,
Absolutely. So along the way, you would have done Victoria Falls, you would have done Lake Malawi, you would have done the gorillas in Uganda, Zanzibar, and eventually the Nile.
yes, they did all of that exactly.
Were you on like a what did you call it, a bus or was it a truck?
It was a truck, overland truck. Yeah. So,
You
yeah.
didn't call it a bus, right? Because then we could have just ended this call right now. But thank you so much for what was your biggest highlight in Africa?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. It was 1997. It was after a massive change. Nelson Mandela and I sat in this cafe in Cape Town, and I just spoke to this gentleman about what does it mean? What does the change mean? And sorry, um, he just taught me a lot about being proud and happy and not being angry, and that change can be really good. But we all need to give, and all need to be, part of a conversation. So yeah, it was really life-changing experience, and something that I hope that we can replicate some more of that here in Australia, when people are listening to each other and taking other people's opinions a bit more, rather than just being combative.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what you just experienced there with that gentleman there? It's a philosophy called Ubuntu. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, yeah, very special. Yeah, it's very true. I think that didn't grow up with that as a concept, but I think Australia's constitution is built on I'm okay when we're all okay, and I think that that's why I'm so proud of that. That's part of who we are as a nation. I just think we need to lean into it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Did you get to meet the Masai Mara in Kenya?
Yes, but it was a bit touristy, so no, not genuinely. We had the tourist version of that.
Fantastic. I think Africa teaches you how to negotiate in the markets, right? What was that like to you?
Yes, I've got a lot of soapstone carvings in my house still from back then. It was good. Like, actually, funnily enough, in Malawi,
Yes.
I did learn a lot about negotiating there, because the Malawi chairs.
Yes.
I went around the markets and asked different questions, and I asked people about, how long does it take to make it, and what's involved, and how much is the hourly wage in Malawi, and picked up pieces of information so that I could ultimately go back and negotiate the one that I wanted based on that information, rather than just picking a number out of the air.
Absolutely. Well, that's the way to do it because everywhere you go, it's still the same, artifact, but obviously from a different artist and things of that nature. So that's
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing. I've lived in most of the places that you're talking about. I've lived a lot in Malawi, and there's a lot of negotiation, especially when you're buying fish at the market. What one person says is completely different to what the other
yeah,
person says and stuff like that. What I
yeah.
what I never got around to was running like the Masai Mara. Some of them are probably running butt naked on a zebra with a bone sticking through their nose, and then they're just yodeling all over the place. How do you negotiate with people like that? So
Meet them where they are. Get into it.
great stuff. Absolutely. After Africa, you did then the UK, and then I would think from there it was also a whole different experience with yes.
Very much. Yeah. So I spent 6 years ish in the UK. And that's really where my corporate career started. And I got a lot of experience working in brands like Prudential and Credit Suisse First Boston. And just really understanding how a massive organization works and how people communicate, particularly in First Boston, because you had the Swiss and then you had the Americans. And so it was just after merge and, two cultures working out how to communicate with one another and being functional as well. And it was banking, and I worked in and around the trade floor. So there's a lot of egos as well. So yeah, I did learn a whole lot over there. And that's when I first started really working in sponsorship. Worked on the rugby sevens deal and taking clients to various places around Asia and Europe. So yeah, it was a real privilege to work there, especially at that time. It was a really boom bust time. Markets were great or they were terrible, and that was 6 months on, 6 months off. And so yeah, I look back on those times really fondly. Before I left to come home, I sort of wasn't sure whether I wanted to stay there and live the UK dream or come home and live the Australian dream. So I did a little sojourn to South America to think things over, which was really good again because it's so different in how to negotiate in South America. So that was very interesting times.
Absolutely. Now, Sam, from what I'm gathering, you had your start with knowing what business really is all about. Then pretty much after that, you went on and started collecting evidence and situations around the world of how people do and have a happier existence. And then pretty much from then on, you had so much profound information on how you can get around the world and still maintain sanity in your head. Would you say that would have been the advantage that you have when it comes to negotiating?
It's, no one's ever asked me that question, Prosper, and I never thought about it till this minute. But you're right, because all those experiences have led me to actually be really comfortable in negotiating with anybody or communicating with anybody. So yeah, maybe that is a part of my secret sauce. That's exciting.
Absolutely. But before you had realized this, what was that moment in your negotiation journey that made you realize this was your calling?
It came late in my time back in Australia. So I came home and worked at at PwC and then on to Telstra. And through that's where I did a lot of millions of dollars in deals there. And so in those rooms, you see really good, bad, and indifferent behavior. Because why? That was my overarching question. Why is this behavior so bad at times? And really comes down to the fact that we're never trained in this in school. In this country, we are not trained. So people think that other people are better at it because they feel more confident or comfortable, and you only learn through experiences. So we need a structure. We need to pull it all apart. So 87% of people feel uncomfortable about negotiating almost all of the time. That's a lot of people. So that leaves 13% of us who are really like it or even just are comfortable with it. So, you think about if you're challenged by it, then you're usually dealing with other people that are challenged by it as well. So, I'm trying to raise that number from 13 to, parity would be great. And so through leaving corporate life and trying to work out what am I going to build a business around, there's two things I love. And one is negotiating and the other one's strategy. So two things that people don't like. And so I had to really decide this is what I wanted to do and to break it down to its core. I just think everybody deserves to know how to do this skill. And it's not smoke and mirrors, and it's not something that only special people are good at. Everybody can become a good negotiator. We just need to teach them how.
Absolutely. And that's a really nice stat that 87%, like you said, feel those jitters and things of that nature. But could it also be influenced by the fact that I've been in Victoria ever since I've come to Australia, and I've even gone around Australia, yet half of the time when I meet an individual, they've never maybe even left their suburb or never even left the state, let alone travel outside the country and things of that nature. So they haven't gotten the exposure of how to be when they're around maybe somebody like myself who comes from a foreign space. Because did you notice we went around the world and we could talk about, oh, this culture, that culture, because obviously we are familiar with all of those things. But some people, if they haven't seen them on their TikTok, that sort of culture doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, isn't it? I guess oftentimes people's first experience in negotiating is in Bali and on the beach when people are, really at you. And so that's really strange to people and uncomfortable. So we need to bake it into our culture that we need to be okay to have these conversations. So, you've got these cultural taboos that, particularly around money, it's like, oh, it's rude to talk about money. It's not. It's really not rude to talk about money. It's now, I know that the government has changed the laws so everybody can legally talk about what's in their contracts at work. And so talking about that with friendship groups, even as business owners, talking to each other about what you charge and how you come up with your fees and making that a bit normal, and then having the conversations with our kids, that will stop the intergenerational issues. So, we just need to break the taboos and talk about it as something that it's okay. It's important to have a conversation about what you do want and what you don't want. And we want to talk about what that means in a financial or outcomes context. Because if we don't, we're just being nice, and that doesn't really help it solve anything.
Now, in a culture where tall poppy is somewhat synonymous with being a good human, and statements like, she'll be all right, mate, sort of kill a negotiation before it's even started, how do you view that sort of cultural, I don't know if it's appropriation or whatever the word you understand me saying right now, about those maybe two examples of how the Aussie culture is obviously the bedrock of it all?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So there's one thing, she'll be right, mate. That's excellent. But rather than just go, oh, okay, we need to be saying, okay, so yes, she'll be right, but actually I need to talk about it a bit more. So let's have a conversation about that. So to just taking that extra step, not being rude, not being difficult. It's just like, I don't like ambiguity. That's one of the things I really learned as to why did I think it was super important for me to understand negotiation strategy, was because I felt like things were just left. Oh, no, that's the she'll be right thing. And so it's a beautiful attitude that Australians have, but it's so irritating as well. So I needed to bring it back down to, hang on, this has to equal this, and this is going to happen when that happens. So having that clarity and just a bit of uncomfort to say, actually, you know what, I really need to have a bit more detail. So I had a client the other day who said she went to talk about her salary, and she wanted to do it on email. I'm not a massive advocate, but that's fine. So she sent a note to say, I want to talk about, when can we talk about this? And he said, now's not the time. And so I said to her, what did you do next? And she said, I haven't done anything. And I said, excellent, that's good. So the thing she needs to do is go, okay, when is the time? So it's not complicated, and she's not being a jerk. She's just asking, when is it? So, yeah, I think we just need to push a little bit harder than we would, because what's happening if we don't say something, we're going to sit here over dinner and we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to go out with our best friends and we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to go to a barbecue and we're going to talk about it. So there's all this energy that we're expending on moaning about it, when actually we could just condense all that energy and have a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so many things wouldn't be where they are just if people really just were brave enough to have a conversation about certain things. Now, your company, the other side of the table, you aim to empower individuals in their negotiations. And like you have said, 87% of people have those jitters and things of that nature. First of all, how did you come up with that name?
Yeah, my brother came up with it, actually. It just made sense. And it's funny, it doesn't make sense because I say to people, don't sit on the other side of the table, sit beside people. But it's the concept. That's what we associate negotiating with is, you know, meetings and boardroom tables, I guess. And again, it's an irony because we negotiate all day, every day with our little people and with our partners and our board members and our, you know, business partners and everybody that we come across as well. So yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those names.
Absolutely. But does it have a reflection on the approach that you take, especially when you're working with clients or people that you end up working on behalf of?
Yeah, we work in sort of three ways with people. So we work with people on training them, so educating them on how to negotiate using systems and processes. And then we do on-demand services. So if you've got a big deal, we can be brought in as like a gun for hire to support you on that. And then commercial strategy. So how do you negotiate your worth if you haven't got things in place in your business set up, first of all, to actually know how to negotiate those things? So it's, for us, each opportunity is part of the learning experience, because I can tell you exactly what to say in a negotiation. I can give you a script for it and everything, but there's a fat chance you're ever going to use those sentences. So what I need to do is give you the framework so that you can do it your way, and then encourage you to practice it and refine it and look at it. So we don't get invited to actually think, how do I feel about negotiating? Our first reaction is, I don't like it. Most people. And so we need people to go, hang on a minute, how do I actually feel about it? If I take 2 days to take a week to look at how I negotiate today, how does that make me feel? What am I missing out on? What am I doing well? And then build a plan after you've actually spent the time looking at it. That's where people can actually make really quick changes and get some really good results, because they're not changing exactly who they are. They're just doing one thing differently, or asking for one more thing than they did yesterday, and then building on that and going, oh, actually, that didn't go so bad. So maybe I'll try it again.
Absolutely. Now, if somebody's thinking, oh, I'm tired of being in the 87%, and obviously negotiating is stressing them out, or it confuses them, or it just seems easier to avoid it and things of that nature, what would be the best way that people can maybe get a hold of you and maybe start their process, or maybe negotiate a good deal with you to help them out?
Good advice. Yes. So follow me on LinkedIn. You know, I think starting to see this as something that's important to you. I mean, there's 3 benefits to negotiating, improving your negotiation skills, and one of those is to make more money. The other one is to save more money, and the third one is to create more harmony. So if those 3 things are important to you as a business owner, let's talk. And yeah, just find out about our programs through the website and things like that. But I think, you know, starting off with something very small, trying to think about how it is that you can go about negotiating in a different way rather than avoiding it, and then really unpacking why you're avoiding it.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. Because if you're going to help people get better, you're going to help them grow their business through negotiating, maybe even teams, because every business problem usually is a people problem. And it's just a matter of you not being able to either be heard, or the other person actually hearing what it is you're asking of them. And, you know, that's the reason why AI thinks it's having a field day, because a lot of people haven't negotiated their contracts or who they are and things of that nature. But before I let you go, I just wanted to find out from you. You advocate for negotiation skills to be taught in schools. Now, Sam, I had won the battle in my household. Ice cream just seems to finish every problem that might be going on that I need to happen. Now, if negotiation is now taught in schools, how do you envision this shaping the next generation, especially my kids?
Yeah. Are you worried? Look, I think it's super important to have healthy conversations. So we learn to debate at school, but we don't do that as adults. So we need to find a way where we can debate. Now, kids are really good at being repeaters. So being mindful of, are they actually negotiating with you, or are they just repeating themselves and breaking you down? So kids on average are around between the ages of 8 to 11 can ask about 300 questions a day. So I don't know how many of those are the same question repeated. That's a lot of questions. What worries me is that drops down to less than 50 by the time they're teenagers. So that's a problem. We need to keep these kids curious and we need to encourage them to ask questions. But how they have those conversations, how they structure their case is what we need to be unpacking. And just like the business owner and their staff conversations, we're not trained to have those conversations up or down. So if we can instill this in our kids and say, look, I need you to articulate why you need to be having ice cream for breakfast and what are you prepared to do in exchange for that or give up in exchange for that. So how do we have these conversations that make sense? And it does depend on how old your children are, but I think that next generation, because what happens, I think the most important thing, if young people can negotiate when they get to teenage years, when there's cars and they're driving around and doing things, how do you instill somebody to be able to say, I don't want you to drive that fast, I don't want to do that thing with you? How do we have these conversations? How do they have these conversations without it being really uncomfortable? So, back to that first conversation about the seen and not heard generation. Are we creating the same thing? It's just that they do it on this. They're texting each other. So we need to have people having conversations with each other about issues that matter.
Absolutely. See, now that you've mentioned that and retracing your journey and everything else you've done, Sam, I kind of feel like what you're offering here is somewhat of a rite of passage. Now, hear me out, okay? Because with everyone that we come across, especially in the first world, and I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, you go from kinder, you go to junior school, you go to high school, and then you go to university, get married, maybe get a job, kids, and then get a promotion, buy a car, get a disease, and obviously then that's the sort of end of you without somewhat of a pattern break. Whereas in some of the places where you've been to and gone to, some kids, when they get to the age of 13 or 16 for guys, you're sort of called in by the village elders. And then they tap you on the shoulder and then they say, hey, it's your turn to lead now. And then you start learning all these things on how to be, do, and have a happier existence. And especially in my culture, a lot of Ubuntu philosophies are now instilled. And then from there, you can apprentice yourself to maybe a cobbler, a roofer, a builder, and then you start choosing your profession, things of that nature, right? And then that sort of pattern break, even in South America, they have it as a quinceanera, and they have some cultures as a bar mitzvah and things of that nature, and that sort of just really gets somebody some difference between being a kid and being an adult. I don't know. And with what you're showcasing here, getting better at negotiating, you're going to need negotiating wherever you go. You're going to need that skill set, whether you're growing a business or you're negotiating a pay rise or things of that nature. Maybe you're talking to your team as a team leader or as being a part of a team, and you want to negotiate for better, experience and things of that nature. Even in sports, like maybe there has been a foul or things like that. So everywhere we look, there has to be somewhat of negotiation. And if people haven't been trained, and if they haven't been brought to look at the other side of the table, then we probably are just talking to fully grown babies every single day that throw tantrums instead of being able to negotiate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a big part. Communicating is such a massive part of it. I mean, how do I tell you something you don't want to hear? I might need to say no to you about something really big. And if I can't say no to you about the small things, how am I setting myself up for success? And I think it is a wonderful thing to look at different cultures and say, wow, is that what's hhappening right now? 16-year-old boys, are they boys and girls? Generally speaking, what's their, how are we transitioning them to adulthood with a pair of gloves that help them go, here, I learned all this stuff and I made all these mistakes. Don't make these mistakes. let me help you go through the process and invite you to become an adult that you are proud of. That's an interesting thing. There's a lot of discussion about toxic masculinity and all these conversations about what does it mean to be a good man or a good woman, and we don't have the structure in place.
Absolutely. I quite like that. No, Sam, I know you've graduated when it comes to negotiating with humans and, any of the things that align with what humans do and create. But I've also heard you're starting to negotiate with the elements. You're going to be negotiating with the wind, the sun, the earth, and you're training to do a marathon in 2025. How's that negotiation?
That is a good question. There is a lot of negotiation going on with myself and my gym instructor and my running buddy. So yeah, it's hard every time that the alarm goes off at 5:06. I'm like, really? We're doing this again?
Great stuff. Great stuff. But how does that sort of align with your professional philosophy and obviously the way that you've become?
It's always about trying different things. I never thought, I'm going to go and do a half marathon. That's really my goal. It was actually one of my anti-goals. And I just thought, it was the big goal for 2025 that has been set. So it was really not so much about the run. It was about the process to get there. So the training and getting healthier. So I spoke to a woman many years ago who told me about the best way to stave off dementia was actually to always try new things. And that's a lot of what I like to do, coming back to that curious mindset that I was taught as a teenager by my dad. I've got to ask why. Why would I sit here and watch television, when I could go out and join the run club and go for a 10K run tonight? Yay! Because the upside is XYZ, meeting new people, doing different things, whatnot. So it's that balance of anything, why would I do that or why would I not do that? It's baked into who I am.
Absolutely. Now, Sam, I can't thank you enough for the time that we've spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience and that which you're doing for other people it's like you're literally giving people back to themselves, because if you can negotiate for things that will put you in a better state, that will be such a profound skill that would let you be, do, and have whatever it is that you want in life. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thanks, Prosper. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just encourage people to just do one thing differently tomorrow, having listened to us have this conversation, and just see what happens. And it's only little things that make a big difference. So, thanks for the opportunity.
I like that, because it's the little swings the little hinges that swing the big doors. And before you know it, one droplet can end up as an avalanche. I don't know if I spoke too soon about Australia, but, that's just the way it is. But I really, really appreciate the time, that you have taken with us today on the call.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much. I'm hoping now you can, or at least you've been empowered enough to negotiate better outcomes with less stress and more satisfaction, as you've realized everything in life is a negotiation. If you've got the skills, the strategy, and the tactics, you, my friend, could end up on the other side of this table with what you want and what you have bargained for, and maybe a little bit more, and also in a fair outcome that will help everybody else involved. So if you're eager to transform your negotiation skills, I encourage you to explore Sam's resources and consider how mastering, negotiation can actually lead to a more prosperous life. And don't forget to check out her free tool. It's the Greed Calculator to assess your negotiation readiness this year. Okay, so if you can measure how greedy you are, not greedy, greedy. All right, that means you walk into a negotiation fully armed, knowing what your strengths are and how you're gonna go about it. And also, if you found this episode enlightening, I want to ask you a small favor. Just share it with somebody who is struggling to negotiate something in their life. It could be a pay rise, it could be clients are not paying on time, or it could just be suppliers are not, doing their end of the bargain, because they could actually benefit from the art of negotiation. And if somebody has shared this with you, I hope you'll be able to get better outcomes moving on. And if not, Sam is always there to help you out. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more insightful content like this. Because in the next episode, we're going to be exploring how you can actually lead your life with a happier existence. Until next time, I just want you to remember one thing: the power to ask is the power to prosper. Bye for now.